morning. Shubhra Gupta ji, past president of Neena ji and Gupta ji. Navika Kumar, political economy editor, Times Now. Nistula Heber, senior assistant editor, The Economic Times. Smita Sharma, associate editor, Foreign Affairs, Network 18. Ashutosh Sinha, senior business journalist. Members of the dais, friends, a very warm welcome to you today's session. And a very hearty welcome to the distinguished panel we have amidst us today. I'm sure that the deliberations that ensue on today's topic will be very stimulating. Before I go on to today's program, I would like to update you on the forthcoming programs of FLOW. In July, in face-to-face dialogue with the Delhi police on women's safety. Again in July, an informative session on women's health. In August, a management program designed specially for FLOW members at IIM Bangalore. I'm really happy that at FLOW we are discussing and debating the key political issues that are affecting women in India. For the first time in the history of Indian elections, the concerns of women have made it onto the political debate, whether on safety, education, or empowerment. Now the words that have been spoken must translate into meaningful actions, and all of us have a very important role to play in ensuring that this happens. Today the words of Suzanne B. Anthony resonate very strongly for me. There never will be complete equality until women themselves help to make laws and elect lawmakers. That statement was made 120 years ago. And today, the fast facts show that we still have a long way to go. For example, only around 10% of world leaders are women. Only 21 countries out of 193 UN member states have women at the helm. Less than 15 diplomatic missions in India have women ambassadors or high commissioners out of 155 missions in India. In India, only 11.6% of parliamentarians are women. In 1911, women were allowed to vote in just 2 countries in the world. In 1911, only 2 countries. And today, a century later, that right is virtually universal and a fundamental right. But how many women actually step out and exercise their electoral rights? How many prominent are women issues in the manifestos of political parties? How many women candidates are actually fielded by political parties to contest elections? And what is happening to the Women Reservation Bill? Today's discussions with our renowned panel will debate these issues and more in the light of the ongoing elections and its possible outcomes. And I'm sure it will also generate ideas and suggestions for how the agenda of women can be furthered under the new government when it is formed. Let me introduce now the eminent panelists who have shown remarkable success in their lives as journalists. Welcome Navika. Navika Kumar is the political editor of Times Now and also the economy editor. She has over 2 decades of experience in covering and reporting on politics, elections, and finance. Over the years, Navika Kumar has done several hard-hitting investigation reports which have exposed corruption in the corridors of power. She's also the recipient of the Prem Bhatia Award for her stories in 2005. Welcome Nistula. Nistula is assistant editor, Political Bureau and Economic Times and drove most of the political coverage assignments. She was born and educated in Delhi and has been a journalist for the last 11 years. 14 years. We got carried away by her looks, so we did 11. She wrote a full-length novel, Kiss and Tell, published by Penguin India, which has been a bestseller. Now there's another forthcoming publication of hers, which she wants to keep under the wraps. Ms. Smita Sharma. Welcome, Nistula. Welcome, Smita. Ms. Smita Sharma is Associate Editor for Foreign Affairs with IBN7. She has crisscrossed the length and breadth of the country to cover various assembly and parliamentary elections. When not working, she loves reading, cooking and driving. She's a trained Kathak dancer and loves music and films cutting across borders. Welcome Mr. Ashutosh, our moderator for today. Mr. Ashutosh Sinha is a senior business journalist, having been one of the senior editors for NDTV and TV18. He was last heading the non-market programming for NDTV Profit. With 2 decades of experience tracking business and economic policy, he has had a wide range of reporting assignments in India and overseas. He will be moderating the session today. Welcome, Mr. Ashutosh. So without taking much time, I would like to conclude by thanking our sponsors for the year, Unitech Limited, Palacia, a project of Om Metals Infrastructure, and Overnight Express. I would also like to take this opportunity to thank Shubhra Gupta, past President Flow, for hosting the lunch today. And before I end, a quote from Plato from his book, The Republic, written 2,500 years ago and is still so relevant today. The price good men pay for indifference to public affairs. The price good men pay for indifference to public affairs is to be ruled by evil men. And with election results round the corner, the whole discussion today falls into perspective. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for this wonderful introduction. Before I begin, just a quick note. As I entered, I was just messaging a friend, and he said, "Why are you working today?" And I said, "I go for a small program that I have to moderate at Vicky." And I told him about the program on WhatsApp. And I just replied to him instantly, and he said, "Wow, you're looking really chirpy." I said, "I probably have never seen so many women today." So that kind of set the mood for the morning, should I say. Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone. And it's something very serious and something I must say very close to my heart that we're discussing today. And when I first discussed with Vicky, I didn't have a thing to say yes, because this is something I believe in and I would love to see happen, before my eyes, as sooner the better. I'll start with a mention of the preamble to the Constitution. And just to remind you, we the people of India, having solemnly resolved to constitute India into a sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic, and to give to its citizens justice. One of the lines says justice, social and economic. Now let's just pause there and hold our hearts and say, is that, on a scale of 1 to 10, how well have we done? And just narrow down to the woman part, or the women part of it. What has the state done? That's one part. And what have institutions done in the nation? Rather than me speaking, let somebody who has been a political commentator, and hand it over to you.
Well, I just thought that this should be better if it was question answer. We all discussed amongst ourselves rather than a one-way lecture.
Of course, yeah. It's not about the lecture. I'm saying in that context, just imagine how well do you think have we done as a nation over the last 67 years, or maybe 50 years since we had the first woman prime minister.
Well, the one thing that we've done in India is we've preserved democracy. So that in itself is a huge achievement. We've kept the democratic flag flying high. We're the largest democracy, this side of the world and across the world. So in that sense, nobody can belittle the achievement that India has had, despite us being an underdeveloped country. We're still fighting for development rankings. We're still fighting for getting our various indices, comparative to the Western world. But one place where we've done well is the fact that we've preserved ourselves as a democracy. But let's get down to the role of women in democracy. It's an abysmal record. Just 11%, as Neetaji was saying in her speech, 11% of women being in parliament doesn't really speak very well for us. And all of us here will remember the kind of struggle that we've had in parliament to get through the 33% reservation for women bill. That in itself is a horrible record of the way we've been going around trying to get this done, the way we've pushed it, and the kind of commitment we have all around to do something like this. So on that score, it really does leave a lot to be desired. How do we push it? I think it requires manifold more commitment of women across the country in terms of effort than we have been putting so far to make a difference, to get onto that particular bandwagon and get reservation. And reservation, I mean, there are no reservations in jobs. Women have excelled in private sector jobs, government sector jobs. Why do we need reservations in the parliament? We should be able to do it on the basis of just merit.
Being such huge number.
Absolutely, I mean, as we say, power of 49% of the population is women, so we should just make it there by the dint of our own merit. Why has Parliament kept women out? I don't see this as a phenomenon which has happened because women haven't reached there. No, it's the other way around. Women have been deliberately kept out because everywhere else we've reached. We're doing the jobs in the technical sector, we're doing jobs in the financial sector, we're doing jobs in the teaching sector, we're everywhere. From research, from high level.
So is it the men who are deciding it, which is why, let me ask this to Madam. Is that why it's happening?
Well, we have to look at politics in its own context and the language and the framework of rules within which it operates. You have vote banks, you have representatives of those vote banks, and you have the wooing of those vote banks, which is what happens in the elections. In the history of Indian elections, there has never been an election on women's issues. There has never been a gendered election, so to speak. Women are not a vote bank uniformly. They are as much a part of their caste, community, religion, language as the men are. And for all these years, they have been voting on those bases, just as the men have been voting. So I don't see why women, as a separate category, should be given more tickets. Should be given more representation till they themselves make a change and say no, all of this is fine, but as somebody who belongs to a different gender, these are my gender specific issues and I'm forming this pressure group. I would want other women to join me, and we should, in the rules that frame political engagement in this country, say that whichever party does this, we can guarantee you the support of these many groups. Because that is the only way that politicians will understand the language that the demand that you are making. Whenever you ask political parties, leaders of political parties, there are many political parties in this country which have women as heads. And yet you have very, very poor representation when it comes to giving tickets or positions in the party. BJP, I think, is the only party which has implemented 33% reservation in all organizational posts for women. But other than that, there is no other political party which has done that. Even though Sonia Gandhi heads the Congress party, Mayawati heads the BSP, Jayalalitha heads the AIADMK, Mamata Banerjee heads the Trinamool Congress, and it is being said that if anybody can stop Mr. Narendra Modi from being the next Prime Minister of this country, it's the three women. Angry women in this country who will do it. So, but they still don't have a very good record of giving tickets to women. Why is that? Because women have not been able to sell the women's vote. There is no such thing as a female vote in this country. There is a Jat vote, there is a Dalit vote, there is a Muslim vote, there is a Brahmin vote.
Which is rather sad.
But you have to engage, I'm sorry, I'm sounding very cynical, but you have to engage them in the language in which they understand.
Okay. Smita, if women head political parties and are still not able to push the agenda for women, even political parties, BJP or Congress, the mainstream two political parties, there the representation number of people who have been given tickets is a bit of 10% or so. What will make the change? How do women need to approach political parties to make sure that the change is in the positive direction?
It's a multiple issue, and on a lighter note, if I may say, On a lighter note, if I may begin by saying that I'm glad to see a man hold fort here and actually raising questions
I
about
believe
women's
in it, and I
issues.
generally believe in it.
And no, why? Because being in TV, I've had these situations where my ex-boss, who was your namesake and who now wears an AAP cap, he would line up these all-women's panel on women's issues, last minute suffer jitters, and then expect me to transform into some sort of a feminist avatar and go there and anchor the show. And I would always be like, how about men also raising issues that concern women and not just leaving women to feel it out for themselves? But as Nestula pointed out, as Navika pointed out, there are 2-3 issues here. If I could just sort of draw your attention to some statistics that I sort of have. If you look at the women voter percentage and the turnout, really, women in India have had the right to vote since 1930, but as Nestula rightly said, they're still not looked upon as a coveted constituency. They're not a vote bank really. But the voter turnout, if you see, in the 50s, we had a women voter turnout of nearly 38.8%. That went up to 60% in the 90s. Whereas in that corresponding period, as far as the turnout of men was concerned, that only increased by 4%. So clearly women were coming out of their homes to vote, they were becoming politically more aware. Initially they used to vote en masse. I would now like to believe that women also make their own informed choices. I know of this friend's mother who really always went out and voted